All right. So are you guys seeing that?
Oh,
Ooh.
yeah. Look at you, fancy man.
I know.
Fancy man. So I was looking around for a good graphic and I was like, everything I looked at, just, I didn't like it. So then I saw this, I was like, well, it's kind of good. It's got 4 quadrants on it. Why not? So
Yeah. No, I think
um,
that's cute.
if I take more time, I was going to give him like a speech bubble or something, but I'll do that afterwards. All
There you
right.
go.
So my 3 takeaways. I did 3 takeaways in a challenge. The first one was very much about like the mentorship. Um,
Mhm.
no, I'm sorry. The first one is kind of about what are we? Are we teaching technology, or are we teaching learning?
Right.
And I like this concept that it's more about the brain. It's more about how do we teach kids to use their brains and to think differently. It's not about learning about the tools. And this has been one of the challenges that we deal with all the time with teachers. They want to use this thing. It's like, well, what are you using the thing for? If it's about the thing, then this is not what we're talking about. Don't bring me a tool, bring me a use, bring me an impact, bring me a way that it's going to change the way your teachers are learning. And I thought kind of going along with this was, don't wait until you're an expert to introduce something. The idea that we don't, there's the technology is changing so quickly. If we wait until we're perfect at it, we're never going to move forward. And this is a challenge for teachers, of course, because they want to know everything before they bring it out in a classroom. They absolutely have to know I have to be up on it. No, you don't. You
No,
have to know the
you don't.
basics of it.
Well, and I really loved in that same little area, I think it said something, yeah, on the troubleshooting technology, under that heading, there was the list of 16 things.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I went and found that article, by the way, friends. It was good.
Okay.
And the link to it, because I knew you guys already knew this, but I spent 1,000 hours one day trying to figure out where they'd gotten something, only to figure out that there's references in the back.
References in the back. Yeah.
That was one of my prouder moments during this book.
Yeah. Well,
The article, so there's a link to, the URL is listed in the references.
yes. Which, by the way, if you use the cloud reader, those links are hyperlinks.
Live. Yep,
So,
live links, nice.
The one advantage to having the Kindle version is those are live hyperlinks.
I don't know if that's one. That's one of several advantages. I like reading on my Kindle.
Yeah, but if not everybody's on the Kindle, because on the Kindle you can use locations, like at this location in the book.
That's true. If not, yes.
You don't have a common you don't have a common reference. You're saying page 92, and I'm like, I don't have pages.
I don't have page
That
92.
that's location 1727.
Mhm.
Right.
And there's not even a mathematical correlation to it.
Nope.
That would be awesome if there was if like page
Ratios
were location 9207.
That's correct.
Figure it out.
Yep.
All right, so that was my first takeaway. My second takeaway, which is missing a quote, just realized at the front. Conflict between the apprentice and his master is not always bad. In fact, it's inevitable if the apprentice's destiny is to exceed the accomplishments of the master. And that's something we struggle with all the time in the arts, is the idea that our goal is to create the artist who goes beyond us, because we're teaching them to be experts, but we are in fact generalists. I'm teaching flute players and clarinet players and saxophone players and trumpet players. They are at some point all hopefully going to be better than me at that. And then it's my job to hand them off. So we have to encourage them to grow beyond us and be ready to give them to someone else, to pass them on to an expert. So we need a whole farm team of experts to pass them on to, in order to make sure that they're ready for the next step, so that they don't get stuck by the parameters of our knowledge and understanding.
I think that's true in content areas too, though, because I see a lot of teachers like that they fear that the students might know more than them, and that they become more of an expert in something than them, and then they will try to hold students back a lot of times because of that fear that the student is passing them.
Right.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree, Vinny. When I read this sentence, and I remember because I just read it yesterday, this sentence,
You
I thought of my child who has had quite a bit of conflict between himself and his music teachers because he has skills that exceed his technical musical knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
But his ability to play his drum set, to play drums, to play mallets, to just sit down at a piano and do some things. None of them are based in theory, and his music reading is way behind his performance level.
Right. Yeah, and that's the challenge, is the teacher has to deal with the idea that, okay, he's a mimic, he's got a great ear,
Yep.
and play things that he can't yet read. So
yeah.
And here's the issue with music. When we first start teaching students rhythm, which is essentially what we're talking about for your son, is,
Yep.
he has the ability to play rhythmic patterns that he can't translate from the page. But when we start teaching rhythms, the basic of rhythmic teaching is not we introduce a rhythm to a child. We teach a child a song, and then we share with them how it looks on paper. So you have to do that. You have to keep that same thinking going. But when you get to the secondary level, that's not how we think. On the secondary level, we think the other way, which is we're going to hand you notation that you must decode.
Yeah.
And they have to flip it back the other way.
Mm-hmm.
Terrible movie, but the same line. Did you see Drumline?
Oh, yes. Are you serious? You haven't met my husband yet. At some point when you meet my husband, he was a drumline instructor for 10 years.
Right. So this is not a great movie.
But we loved it nonetheless.
And that's exactly where the main character is in that movie. He
100%.
can play anything. Can't read a lick.
No.
So, and your son's not in the same place. Your son has the core reading skills.
Gaining some skills.
His performance ability exceeds his cognitive ability right now, which is
right.
Okay. His teacher needs to find a way to manage that. You almost think, going back to what Ginny was saying, for content area teachers, I'm almost wondering, would it be good for us to tell the teachers, okay, you have that extraordinary student in the classroom, make them a content expert. Figure out a way, okay, you know what, you have an interest level in this, or make them the pro at something. You're really good at this, you're good at this thing, and then they become the reference for the students. You know what, you need help with that. And they actually talk about that. One of the closing sections is they talk about questions to ask the class. Find an expert in using the bibliography tool that we use. Right.
I saw that, and I really liked that.
Yeah, and that was kind of neat, and goes along with what Ginny was saying, which was, the teacher holds people back. We need to get teachers to turn that around and flip it the other way and say, don't hold them back, make them the content experts. Okay, that's your responsibility. And if they don't know how to do it, the two of you need to figure it out, and then you need to come back and tell us, because we don't know.
Right.
And that's kind of how we got to where we are, which is, we didn't necessarily go through, we went through training and we went through learning and everything, but a lot of what we know is stuff that we had to become content experts because nobody else was.
Right.
So we need to get teachers to do the same thing with their students. Yeah, it's easier said. All right.
Unfortunately.
My third takeaway, figure 9.4, that the effect sizes of metacognitive strategies, that blew my mind. I didn't know anybody had ever really measured that. So I was reading that. I was like, that is so cool. Because there's actually research that talks specifically about, if you want to grow your students in metacognition, these are the things they should be doing. And they've always talked about graphic organizers and how they help students, but to have to place a value on how much it changes a student's learning, that it goes beyond that kind of 0.4 threshold where it's meaningful to nearly double that by having a student use graphic organizers, it has double the impact on their learning than every other type of organizational tool and metacognitive tool. That just blew my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Agreed. And I don't know that we always think of the things on this list as metacognitive tools.
right.
I see them as instructional tools, definitely, but I did not make the jump from them being, I was like, yeah, I've seen Hattie's list. Yeah. And I did not think of these 6 or 7 or however many it is as being specifically used for metacognitive purposes. But obviously.
But if you use the very literal, the very literal definition of metacognitive, with basically the idea of thinking about thinking,
Right.
Really, but we don't, metacognition is just kind of this thing that we know it's out there, but we don't, right. But I never really reflected on metacognition. So does that make it metacognitive?
It's metacognitive.
Thinking about thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So, but
well, and really, we are reflecting on how to help others think about their thinking.
So this is metacognitive. This whole extract. All right, wait, this is getting ridiculous now.
Oh well.
But the idea of, I'm sorry, Jenny.
Oh, I was going to say, in my past life, when I used to teach struggling readers, we spent a lot of time teaching metacognition strategies. So I was like, oh yeah. It's been a while since I looked at it, but.
Yeah.
Well, because we spend a lot of time steeped in the tools and just regular cognitive activities, because as supporters of instruction, we're focusing on, teaching teachers how to teach things. We're not focusing on helping learners to learn things so much. And, maybe we need to, maybe, this is a chance for us to reflect on our practice as coaches and say, maybe we need to spend less time teaching about teaching, and maybe we need to spend more time teaching about learning and teaching about thinking. I don't know. Which kind of brings me to my challenge. How do we take a system steeped in averagarianism and move it away from, which I love that word.
Oh yeah.
And they brought back that story about the pilots, which I still think is so incredible. They measured to find the average pilot and found out there is no average pilot. They took all those numbers and they figured it out. No one is actually average. Yeah, even when they lowered it down to just 3 points, they tried to find like 10 points, and that didn't work. When they brought it to just 3, even then they had less than 5%.
5%. Yeah,
that's crazy.
Agreed.
So there is no average. Average is not average at all. But how do we get away from the factory model? Do we, and how do we change those line workers that we've been training for years? And the auto industry has faced the same struggle 15, 20 years ago that we're facing today in teaching. We're getting away from the factory worker model, and we're getting into automation. We're getting into technology. We're getting into individualization, which I also found it very interesting. One of the stats in there was individualization may not be all it's like. The beginning of the closing about individualization was, there's some research that says it's not all it's cracked up to be, but that's kind of to the side. I'll find it in a minute. But do we abandon those people? Do we abandon the faculty workers, the factory workers? How do we get them along? Is it too late? Do we grab the ones who are willing to go and just let the other ones kind of labor on until, their line closes down? Do we have that like one line in the factory that's still making cars the old way while everybody else is making them the new way?
Yeah, that's a great question, and similar to what I ended with. Honestly.
Yeah. And I don't know. I don't think anybody has an answer yet.
Probably not. Or if they do, they haven't shared it with me.
Yeah. Well, if we come up with the answer, we will rule the world.
Yeah, we will.
Mhm.
All right. So those are my 3 and 1.
Cool.
Who's next?
Well, I finally have mine ready if you want me to go. I don't want to go after Julie because she's always the rock star. So I don't want to be last. All right.
You can go.
Okay. Thanks. I clicked share. Oh, there we go. All right. Can you see my screen?
I do. I see it.
Yeah. So the cool part of this was that in the app, you got to swipe around and things were buttons and you tapped on them and now it's a slideshow.
Well,
Oh, well, what are you going to do? Live and learn.
Wait. Before you start.
Yeah.
All right. Personalization and individualization. How does all of this relate to the previous effort around differentiation?
Yes.
That differentiated learning is a broader term.
Right.
Then there is the question of research in this area, claims the evidence supporting individualized instruction is not so supportive, and overall he calculates an effect size of 0.23 below his rule of thumb, effect size of 0.4 for the programs with most interest. So that was the one thing where I thought, that's like one study that says individualization is not a good idea. And then
Right.
chapter dedicated. But it
don't
is.
you think, don't you think part of that though is that date? I mean, she's trying to say if he studied it again, that he'd find different results, I think. Do you think that?
I think it could. So the older studies may no longer align with the current availability of technology enrichment. Yeah, I think you're probably right.
I would be interested to see if he did a study of today's tiny people, what it would show.
Probably find out they have really big thumbs. All right, I'm sorry I interrupted. Go ahead.
No, you're good. Okay, so my ultra exciting slideshow. Chapter 9 and closing. This was a really cool button and it flashed onto the screen. It's fancy.
So you're going to describe the animation?
Yeah, in the middle was this little dot and you clicked or tapped because it was an iPad. So you tapped on the dot and this word box popped up onto the screen.
I'm imagining that.
You should, because it was very fancy and it was even animated, like where it goes right into the, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so anyway, this was a campfire template, which I thought going into summer break was, not that you are, Vinny, because God help you with your month left of school.
Yep.
But was kind of fun or apropos for summer. But I like Hattie's and really it makes all of this, the entire book makes me really think that I can't figure out why I haven't read Visible Learning. Because it seems like, don't get me wrong, I've spent some time on Hattie's website. I've clicked through that big chart that shows all these effects, which if you guys haven't done is really a pretty nice piece of, or a really nice tool for professional learning. Like I've sent it out as a, let's all ponder this. What are our takeaways from this tool? But anyway, I liked the idea of self-regulation versus metacognition because I do feel like self-regulation is possibly a more accessible word, especially for younger teachers. That idea that we are trying to rein ourselves in or encourage or motivate ourselves to accomplish the things that we want to accomplish. But I don't know.
I did kind of like the idea too, because metacognition is a scary word.
Yes. Yeah. Although I liked some of the other quotes about metacognition that are in my next slides. But I think this last part I think is the key. We need to know what to do when we don't know what to do.
Yeah.
and I'm, sometimes I feel like I have to mull things over. Like I have to rotate it around in my brain sometimes even for days. And then I come back to it and I'm like, yes, that's what I need. And we don't really give students that kind of time sometimes.
Right.
To dwell in their vulnerability or to sit in their own thoughts, because we have a scheduled day and it's all and the bell rang. See you guys later. And effective learning is possibly more flexible than that. But anyway, so then this idea of, instead of thinking about your thinking, we might say learning about how you learn. And I wonder, like Jenny, you said earlier, what if our professional learning, or Vinny, you said it, what if our learning was more focused on learning than it was on learning and how people learn than on instructional techniques? But, and then the second part here, the whys and hows of the what. And if you can't identify, I think, going into a lesson, the whys and hows of what you're teaching, I think there's going to be a disconnect between your learning objectives and the learning that occurs.
Yeah.
I think the level of engagement as well.
Yes.
Because they always ask why. Why are we learning this?
Right. Oh yeah. And if you don't have a good answer for that, God help you.
Because you need to know it. When do I need
right.
to know? Why do I need to know it?
Well, and that even goes back in chapter 8 to the whole learning progression things, which I didn't share. I'm not sure why. I didn't share this last time, but at the bottom of, Vinny, page 125.
Oh, let me flip to that.
Yeah. It's the second to last. It's really like, it's the last page of chapter 8. Like if you're on the last page of chapter 8.
Well, that I can find. There's
a heading that says, which one do I use? So Jenny, for us, it's like back a page, but yeah. There at the bottom of that is curriculum more than just teaching the textbook. Really? Because secondary teachers sometimes, like, they're teaching, their curriculum is that we teach chapters 1 through 5, 7, 8, and 12, and this is the order we teach them in. And now we have curriculum. Stamp.
Right.
Right.
And if that's the case, then how do we get them to look at those learning progressions? Because if they don't, can they really answer the whys and hows questions about their what?
Mm-hmm.
So I was connecting that back to chapter 8 and the learning progressions. But anyway, okay. And then my favorite, so I saved it for last, of chapter 9, I fail, I recover. Students with fixed mindsets that harbor negative impressions of themselves must be supported in ways that help these youngsters see, and I think I used the wrong accept, but I did voice to text on my iPad because God knows typing on your iPad is not my favorite thing, so I don't think that's the right accept there, but and celebrate their achievements and their worthiness. Could this be why some students hate school? And I think it might be. Like their experience at school is, especially if they have a fixed mindset, I'm unworthy, I'm not enough, my work does not ever meet anyone's expectations, and I'm incapable, obviously, of being successful in this classroom. And so why would I like school?
Mm-hmm.
Right. They don't see a trajectory. They don't see a landing point for themselves up ahead. They see themselves where they are and not able to move forward.
Yeah, that was my pondering with that anyway. I loved the whole, but of course I have previously shared my love of Carol Dweck and growth and fixed mindsets. So, okay. And then my challenge for chapter 9, the hierarchy of metacognitive behaviors. I loved the toddler examples. I just found those hilarious. They're in figure, was it 9.3? Nope. Where was it? Figure 9.1.
9.1.
Oh yeah, I wrote that on the slide. They're in figure 9.1. But what does that look like for, like that? I was like, okay, I need more now. What, you stopped this paragraph way too soon. I need a lot more information about that.
Right.
How do other ages, what does that look like for a kindergartner? What does that look like in 5th grade? What does that look like in 9th grade? I did kind of think the toddler in number 4, reflective use, seems pretty manipulative. It's like, were my toddlers manipulating me? And looking back, I'm like, yep, they were. Good. So anyway.
Yes, and you know they are because you see it in other people's toddlers.
Oh, yeah.
So when you
in other houses, and you're like, is my kid doing that? My kid doesn't do. Oh wait, my kid does that.
Right. And you look at that other parent and you say, you're being a sucker.
Yeah.
You know why he's doing that, right? And then you go home and you're completely
Like,
confused and oblivious to the fact that the very same thing is happening in your own house. It's a lot easier to see it in somebody else's home than it is in your own.
Oh yeah, which is why with the closing, my takeaway is video in the classroom. We can get an accurate picture of reality. Anyway, that was my case for technology takeaway. I also, Vinny, don't need to have the same discussion about the Air Force pilots, but that was my takeaway from personalized learning. Hashtag I want to swivel.
Good stuff.
Oh my gosh, I want us to all be videoed. Let's do all the videoing all the time. Okay. And then for the technology troubleshooting, we see evidence of that today with the wave of professional learning communities influencing teacher collaborations and many other behaviors in that listing. The willingness to fail and to try, to ask, to be uncomfortable, to question, to dream, to believe, and to embrace resilience and perseverance. I thought that was a beautiful sentence. Like the whole crafting of that was just stellar, in my opinion. And how and where do I fall? Like for each of these things in this list, where am I at with each of those things? And I want to reflect on and think about my own place on because I think some of these are on a continuum. And I want to be at whichever end of the continuum has us doing these things, whether that's the right or the left. And not at the other end where I must be the expert. I must know everything in order to in any way be effective with my students. And of course, I feel like I've trained on tools before that I just had a surface knowledge of. And I was like, I don't know, let's see if it does that, and just been willing to try. Yeah, I haven't done that with this tool, but let's see, because questions arise, of course. And that has at times felt uncomfortable, but also I think has sometimes been some of the more powerful learning experiences we've had in training.
Right.
When I didn't have all the answers about the tool they were using. So, I don't know. And then my challenge for the closing, that almost, it's almost the last sentence in the book. Well, not quite. The last paragraph in the book was pretty brutal. Woof. But the future, they're under future vision. Was the Washington Post article by Alida Margulies. And Vinny, like you, I had big questions here. How do we get from the factory model to this situation where we see these things in an excellent, engaged classroom? And I wrote there at the bottom, the gap is wide and I worry I may disappear into it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think that's the big question with all of these things is how do you move forward from where we are today, and how do you take these big ideas and make them into incremental changes?
Right.
And I think that, you know, one of the challenges is finding a comfort in that, is finding a comfort in an idea that's this big. How do we now, you know, we just have to, you know, the most important step is the first
Right.
one.
Okay, and really what I want for all of this is a learning progression that brings us across from factory model over to, someone could write that for me, that'd be great.
That's
Thanks.
why we have to keep reading books.
Eh,
Somebody wrote it. We just haven't found it yet.
we haven't seen it all yet, so
Hmm.
anyway.
I like your tool. I'm sure it's great with the Zuni.
Well, it was super fun on the iPad, but
Yeah. I know I want to try it now.
yeah. Yeah, you can see the little logo up here,
Yeah.
S. Yeah, that's what that's what it looks like in the App Store.
Is it a free tool?
Yes, until you want to export it.
Right.
So don't do that.
Really get you.
You can though. I mean, like for class, right? Don't export it. Just keep it on the device and share it with anyone.
You know, just get an Apple TV.
But
So all you need
actually, yes, that's what I was going to say. Is within the confines of your classroom,
Right.
It's actually a fine tool. It's just that it has no exportability. So unless you're you know making bank somewhere, which I'm not. So
Yeah, $20 a month is expensive.
right? Yeah. Woof. So, all right, Jenny, your turn.
All right. Let me find my thing here. I have to share my screen. I'm on my Chromebook, not my computer, so my there and then go find it. There we go. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. Oh, very.
Have you guys done a strategy called the lost word before?
With
No.
you one other time.
You have? Okay.
Yeah, you've shown. No, I mean you've shown it to me before, but I can't remember.
Okay.
Got it.
So basically the person who's up, which would be me. So I have a quote that I picked, and you all will discuss what my takeaways and challenge is, and then I will come in at the end and say why I picked that quote and what my takeaways and challenges were. Make sense?
Okay.
So here's the quote, and it's from page 128, and I know that that's not a great reference. It's like, it's right after the chapter started, and it's like, it's the very first word, surpassing all expectations. It's the last sentence before it changes to the road to extraordinary. So changing the talents of experts as the development advances is a fairly predictable part of the story of developing extraordinariness. Okay, so how did I pick this quote?
As the development advances.
Changing the talents experts.
So this is about the shift then from being the student to being the teacher, and the surpass that occurs when student goes beyond his or her teacher, right? And then of course that next little part goes into how we, as mentors, it's that very next sentence, that it's bittersweet when your mentee surpasses you.
Right. But, you know, it's a goal, but at the same time, it's a goal you kind of lament. You don't want it, because it's, you know, it's the beginning. It's the beginning of someone being extraordinary, but at the same time, it's almost the end of a relationship, because it's the dynamic forever changes.
Right.
You know, you're giving up that hierarchy of, you know, you being here and them being there, and it becomes one of these, which it's different. It's, you know, it's also challenging when you're talking about a classroom, because you're talking about an age differential that doesn't normally, you don't normally expect there to be an equality, which is probably one of the things that your son's drum instructor is struggling with. The
Sure.
fact that, you know, the fact
Yeah,
that,
I mean it's his band director that's a French horn player, but yeah.
right. So he's, you know, so he has to give up a little bit of his his own control and his own empirical strength to say that I don't know everything, and there are things that you know that I don't know, and things that you do that I can't do. So I feel like there's an ennui in this. There's like a sense of loss, but a sense of growth at the same time.
Right. Well, and really, are we truly being the type of mentor we should be if we don't reach that point? If the students don't at some point surpass us, did we really do our job?
True. So our job is to figure out why you picked that quote. Is it because it's so?
It was just it was
emotionally
basically open. It was to open discussion. So
Okay.
The person who's up, they pick a quote. So if we were to do this in a group, each student would pick a quote from a selected reading, and so they would present their quote, and then they would go around the circle and they would all discuss that quote and why that person picked that quote. But the person who picked it then has the last word. So then they pick it as they explain why they picked it, and then they would rotate roles. So we've actually already talked a little bit about this, because I think mostly in Vinny's we talked a lot about this, where there's that it's like what you said, Marie, and we that's what I was saying earlier, is like that's how we know we've done our jobs, is if students actually surpass us and they've gone beyond us, that we should be excelling them into the next level. However, I think that there's, and it even says it should be predictable. It's a predictable part of it. We're trying to launch them into extraordinariness, but we have teachers who feel inferior if that happens. And I think so here's my challenge with that. My big challenge with that is really, as a coach, guiding teachers into not feeling you shouldn't feel inferior. You've done your job. You've launched students into where they need to be going next. And you know that they've learned and grown beyond you, and that's where they should be. But teachers don't always feel that way. So I think that's an interesting twist. They want to be the experts. They want to be the most knowledgeable in the room. And I don't know when that shifted. I feel like that was not always the case. Like teachers, they will say that they feel like they should be preparing students for the next level, but that's not how they act or how they present themselves, I think. So anyway,
I don't think it's new. I think it's always been there. I think it's that teacher-student dynamic has always at its core been there. The 21st century teacher we purport to have this mindset that it's about growing, future leaders, and we want them to exceed our knowledge level. But, go back 15 years, and we were the content experts, and that's what we were, and nobody ever got past us, because we always had to have just a little bit more knowledge than they did.
And now there's this insecurity that comes along with that. If they teachers are very insecure about it, and I think you're right. I don't think it's new. I just wonder when it shifted, because
Well, I think there was a big shift, possibly, and you can obviously disagree with me. I think there was a big shift when anything and everything became Googleable.
Yes.
I mean, why do they need, like, if all you're sharing is knowledge level with your students, and they could literally just go Google it and find it on, unfortunately, Wikipedia, please make it stop. Like, what are you doing in the classroom?
Right.
Couldn't just flat out find online.
Right.
And if they can watch a YouTube video for 20 minutes to learn about whatever, and get enough of whatever, why did you just spend 3 weeks giving them instruction on it?
Mm-hmm.
But I also remember my sister was just, well, I was a good student. We were both in gifted, but I was just a good student. I knew how I learned, and I did it effectively.
Right.
My sister was a gifted learner. One time in math class, our math teacher said to her, maybe you could at least pretend that I'm teaching you something today.
Mm-hmm.
And he knew he wasn't. And I don't know, since I don't know that I was good enough at reading someone to, you know, I didn't know if he was my memory does not include him being irritated about that. My memory only includes him saying it.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, and Marie, you and I have had discussion about gifted, like those are the teachers find gifted students the most challenging in the classroom.
Oh yeah.
Like type 2, where they're not necessarily compliant on everything. They want to challenge, and they want to, you know, not challenge in a bad way, but they want to challenge the knowledge. And that's where teachers then they can't give in and like get out of the kids' way, let them learn and facilitate it, and stop worrying about if you're the expert. You're an adult and you know how to facilitate students, so let's do that.
Right.
Okay. Anyway, so yeah, the takeaways, a lot of my takeaways had to do with that, where it was that we should, that's a predictable part of it, that students should advance beyond us, and that we should expect that, and that that bittersweet truth, and like we've already talked about all the different takeaways. And my challenge we've already talked about too with Vinny's, where it was.
We're not seeing your screen, by the way, Jenny.
I know, I stopped sharing because it was just a quote.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was all I had, was the one slide.
Oh, that's right.
Rockstar today.
Hey, but you're gonna unpack boxes. So.
Jenny's on vacation.
Yep. Anyway.
Yeah. I think the book as a whole left me with lots. I mean, I want, and I'm going to go back through and look at, I want to go back through not only and look at each of the things I created for each of our meetings, but each of those, this is a way you could put this into action in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I don't know if I told you both, but there's a book study is going to start on this book in June in my district, and I'm not leading it, but I'm planning to participate. I hope I don't step on the toes of the leader, but because she's a classroom teacher who well, Jenny, I told you a bunch of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, she wanted to lead a book study on school culture and collaboration and improving relationships in your building and supporting each other. And she's possibly the least collaborative, least likely to support her colleagues person in her building. So that was kind of, interesting. And then when I put back out there, hey, based on interest in book studies, these are 5 or 6 books that would meet that, that would meet some of the objectives that people are wanting from a book study this summer. And she wrote back and was like, yeah, I want to do that, Unlocking Student Talent. That looks amazing. Like, So, but we went ahead with it. And actually, Jenny, I didn't tell you this part. I emailed her principal before we released all the summer learning everything, probably about a week before, and said, hey, your teacher has volunteered to lead this study. This is what Shannon and I are thinking, my boss and I, this is what my boss and I are thinking about that, blah, blah, let us know. And like 5 days after I released all the summer professional learning, she wrote back to me, I'm not sure this is a good idea. Well, 2 weeks ago, you had a chance to weigh in on that.
Right.
Yeah.
The ship has sailed. So, I don't know. I am still interested, though, to see how that will develop over the course of the summer.
I still think it'll be okay because you're going to participate. You're going to be,
Yeah. And the learning, even separate from any facilitating you could do, just the information that's in here, getting out to more people and being in the hands of our teachers is better than it not being in the hands of our teachers.
Yeah.
Exactly. People will, by osmosis, will learn something.
Yes, agreed. Oh yeah, just being in the presence of the book. And even if they read 1 or 2 chapters and don't really get the whole, because I think some of them will get bogged down in the introduction Remember what we thought about the introduction?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The introduction was rough reading.
Dude,
It was.
it was brutal. And it's only like 8 pages.
But it was dense. It was eight
Yeah.
really dense pages.
Swamp water. Yes,
Swamp
you're in the
water.
swamp. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so very good. All right, what are we going to do another book study this summer?
Well, can we first do some reflections on the process?
Oh yeah, let's do that.
All right, so I'm sharing my screen. Hang on, let me blow this up so we can see it. So, what did we what were our likes about the process? I like the collaborative aspect,
Mm-hmm.
and please ignore my typing because can't type.
You're great.
You know, I also like the differing perspectives, you know, talking to people who are not from where I'm from and not doing what I do necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I liked the discussion of how different, because we think of, you know, like public education being public education being public education. And even between, you know, Ginny and I being in the same state, our experiences and our take on public education has been very different. Very, very different, let alone how different it is from what you're telling us. In New York is like, so.
Mm-hmm. I really like having, knowing that I'm accountable to make sure I do read and I don't put it off, because when you have people you need to discuss with, you know, you need to get it done. And, you know, lately I don't have a lot of time for the reading, but it's so important. So.
Yep.
Yeah, I was telling Marie. I'm not sure if I mentioned it when I was speaking to you, Ginny. A bunch of the Microsoft experts are doing literally what we're doing. They're doing a virtual book club.
Mm-hmm.
And they've selected a book and they have a whole schedule of, you know, here's the reading schedule. I haven't delved into what they're doing for accountability or for sharing or anything like that, but they've just kind of thrown it open. They put it out to, here's a bazillion, you know, they tweeted it out to a bazillion people. And, you know, I'm curious to see how it all goes. And their culmination, like their end date is at ISTE. So I'm not sure if they're doing like
That's a quick.
8 benchmarks to read this whole book. I'm not sure if they have a whole accountability thing, or if they're doing like a tweet meet kind of thing in order for sharing. I got to get into that, but I also, the accountability was a big part for me because otherwise I never read.
Right.
It's not open on my nightstand. I have 7 books on my nightstand that are unread.
Oh,
I'll do it tomorrow or when I have
Yeah.
time next week, or
Oh yeah. Well, and even in addition to that, I thought the having to create something forced me to synthesize and evaluate the reading much more effectively in a deeper manner. And if we hadn't done the creation part, the product part, I feel like I would have had a surface level of learning. Maybe. Because I didn't have the accountability was deeper than just read before you come so you can effectively discuss. Because I can fake it till I make it pretty well on a lot of educational topics at this point, right?
Yeah.
But since we had to create something, like it was much more authentic, I guess. For me anyway. And then there was a vulnerability to that.
What do you mean?
Well, I don't think, and Ginny and I talked about this last week without you, for which we apologize, but we were getting our coach's presentation ready.
That's all right.
And Vinny, do you have Netflix? So Brene Brown's new show, it's a Netflix special. Have you watched it yet?
No, but you did mention it.
Oh, I mentioned it last time because I am a broken record. Really good at it.
It's amazing.
It clearly
It's
spoke to you.
amazing. You need to watch it, Vinny. Before we talk again, you have to watch it. It's 80 minutes of the best television you'll watch this year. It is, seriously.
Yes.
But there is vulnerability in creativity. When you create something, and I'm getting all of that from her talk, right, Jenny?
Yeah.
When you create something, you're putting yourself out there, your ideas, in a way that requires courage and vulnerability. Yay, Brene Brown.
Yes.
I agree. And especially when we first get started, like the two of you, Marie, you know both of us, but Ginny and I don't know each other. So, we come in the beginning and we're putting up a product and we don't know how.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and one of you may not be the type of person that is open to disagreement or is open to looking at something from a different perspective, and you don't know if that other person is going to be outwardly judgmental, is going to throw rocks at your shiny thing that you're proud of, and you don't because you don't have any experience with how they treat people or their code of ethics, I guess, or
Yeah.
code of kindness.
Yeah. But the hope is that, and everybody has that hope. If you know at least one person in the group, if you're connected by these 6 degrees
Right.
of separation, your hope is that each of those connections share enough traits in common that you're going to be, likable. With a group of only 3 people and we're only one connection away, it's a little bit easier. If I brought another friend and Ginny brought another friend, now as we start to get further away,
Right.
the risk is even greater. And the chances of negative feedback increase as well because we don't know, what we share with those folks.
Well, and I felt comfortable telling one of you that I didn't necessarily agree with what you said, but I think we built each other up in our disagree, That's not been my experience. This has been my experience, but we didn't do it in a you're an idiot and a moron type of manner.
Yeah.
I see your point of view. It's not been how I have done life, but that doesn't make you a bad person because you did it.
Nobody was wrong. We just had different perspectives, different approaches, different backgrounds.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Do we want to share some of the challenges in the process?
Yeah, let's do that. Getting it done before you guys got it, before we were supposed to meet.
Right.
Next.
And I was going right where Vinny was typing, which was finding it. I don't know if you were actually going to write this, but a common time.
Finding time. But again, like our book studies this summer are taking place on Yammer, and I just don't think that conversations are as authentic. Because you don't get any inflection, and you don't see, and really correct me if I'm wrong here too. I found some of our meetings, and this was a challenge for me, at times emotional. Like it was kind of it was a therapeutic type challenge, but it was emotional to engage with you all. And I felt like I could be passionate, but I came away from, you can put this on both. I came away from our meeting rejuvenated, or feeling like I could take it another day, I could do it another time, I could continue to show up because you two were showing up. But that was a challenge. Being emotionally prepared to share myself in this way was at times challenging. I think somewhat because we picked a book that had so much stuff that we were also passionate about, though, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I think along with finding that common time, like even when we did find a time that worked for everybody, like there was a couple of occasions where our schedules got trumped by people higher up than us. And so
Oh yeah.
I think it's part of the common time, but it's another step of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and really until we go out and start our own business, like that's just going to be the.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Well, and we do have the advantage that in general, we manage our own time.
Right. We have some autonomy.
Classroom teachers could not work on this schedule.
No. Right.
This would be, so this would it would have to shift to be an evening thing. Have to be an evening or a weekend. It would
Yes.
be like, on alternating Tuesday nights at 7:00, whatever.
Right. And actually I would ask both of you that I every once in a blue moon, like sometimes even 8 months goes by between me doing this, but I would like to participate in the Twitter chats sometimes after the 10-hour day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or 12-hour, like and with my kids' activities.
Mm-hmm.
I was at 7 a.m. I got home after 7, after some ball game, which, is hypothetically fun, except that really I left the house 12 hours ago and I am finished. So no, I'm not going to jump on Twitter and be in a chat with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm the same way. I can't brain after a while. I don't have it.
Can we have okay, now, Vinny, Ginny and I got matching t-shirts for our presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
We're ultra cute. I mean, we are the height of cute. But if I can have a t-shirt for the three of us that says I cannot brain after a certain point, I would do that.
I'm sure that t-shirt actually exists. It's out there.
Obviously. I mean, that's stellar. I love it. Oh.
All right. So if we were going to change something, what would we change? For example, if we decide to pick up another book, what would we do differently?
Well, I kind of liked Ginny's last word strategy there. So maybe, though make, like each time rotating that someone was going to bring a strategy for how we would share.
So we're not each making a product each time. It's I'm going to facilitate this time and you'll facilitate next time. We've all read the material.
Right.
So instead of all three people sharing, just one person share and.
No, we all end up sharing.
Right. But like Ginny, this time she brought a single quote and then we played her little game, right?
Yeah.
Oh, the puppets. We are the, no, anyway. But if we, so the time before, so like if next time were my time, I would say, okay, this is the instructional strategy we're going to use. So everyone bring this and we'll use it in the instructional strategy. And then, the next time Vinny would say, okay, next time everybody on chapter 7 and 8, everyone's going to bring this. And so whatever you created would fit the mold of the instructional strategy that the person was going to facilitate.
So it could be that we're all creating something. It's just that each person rotates and decides like the strategy.
Right. So like the idea of the three takeaways, one challenge,
right,
or the last word. Yeah.
Right. Or I loved Ginny's one pager. Because that was not a strategy I had seen. And then Vinny, we can send it to you also. Did you see that?
Cool to Pedagogy then wrote a whole article on one pagers. I sent it
right,
to
like less than 12 hours after we had that meeting. Yeah.
Crazy.
Oh, you gotta send me that.
Yeah, that was really good. And it was really well done. And I put it in my, this is something I'm going to make people read this summer when they come to my learning. So, yep. Because I think several of the tools that I am presenting on this summer that I'm creating learning opportunities for, because again, we've talked about how everything's self-paced and they all get to do whatever they, would fit into the idea of a one pager. There's several different tools that I'm going to help them learn to use. that would create what what you called a one pager and what the article that Cult of Pedagogy had. Definitely. So.
Mhm.
Okay. Do we need time parameters?
Yeah, we kind of got out of control on time occasionally.
Occasionally. I think
Always.
just about every one we did has been like, let's see, we're an hour 15 now on this one. This has been our tightest one so far for time, and that's mostly because Ginny's at home and I feel terrible.
Oh.
We're out of guilt. Well, shoot, Vinny, we did one when you had off of school vacation. You were on your Easter break. Really good one. We didn't apparently feel nearly as, we don't have the guilt complex that you do, apparently.
Because
grew up
Ginny's
Catholic.
literally on summer vacation. That's not just like
Right.
a day
No,
of
yeah.
break.
That's true.
That was Easter. I'm not actually off for Easter. I work for church. I'm busy.
Right.
Well, one of the things that I was thinking of, and and I was wondering, do we set like a hard start time? Like, 1 o'clock is when the call begins. 1:15, we're in the content. We agree that we're going to stop the BS and by.
Yeah.
We build in the social time. Like, okay, 1 o'clock is
That's
when
a
we're
great
starting
idea.
content. At 12:45, we open up the call, and it's
Yep.
12:45. Whoever's free jumps on the call, and whatever. But by 1 o'clock, we're having the meeting, and that's that.
Right.
Mhm.
I like that because I think one of the powers in what we're doing here is the social relationship building
Agreed.
thing, but then we have to get to the book study thing because that's another big chunk of the learning we're doing. Not that there's not learning during the social time, because I think there is.
It's just different.
It's different.
Learning.
Does the social time need a focus? Like, do we say, for example, I do a monthly meeting for music administrators, and they have like a pre-meeting workshop where they focus on a particular topic. I don't know, this might be a little bit too much structure, but my fear is, and this kind of goes to my next question too, do we scale this up? Do we have
I would love to scale it up, but then also you're gonna have to put back up on time parameters. That has to go to, like, I had 9 slides there.
right?
That's not acceptable.
Well, but if we focus on a particular learning strategy, rotating strategies, then
Right,
and
each
there's
person
also,
gets-
as we get to more people, we may decide, what, mine is a reiteration. I'll show you mine, but we're not going to talk about mine. Here's a quick look at it, but I'm reiterating stuff. There's only 3 of us, so we're not necessarily
Mhm.
in 2 chapters. We're hitting a variety of content. If we doubled the number of people, there'd be a lot more people covering
Overlap.
stuff. So we would say, that's a repeat. I'm just going to move on. So,
Mhm.
here's what's new in my thing. And then it becomes, and then of course, since we're one strategy, then we have that, we create a repository of the tools. It's like,
Yeah.
so you show it and then it goes in
Mhm.
a bucket somewhere where
Right.
people can pull it out. And
Right.
so, but getting back to it, that workshop, that pre-meeting workshop always has like a content, like somebody's talking about this thing, or somebody's going to lead a discussion on this, or,
Okay, we could do, so my grandmother was in this thing that called Study Club when I was a little kid. Actually, she did that all the way through the end of her tenure in Scott City. She had to move out to live closer to my aunt in Colorado here about 2 years ago. But almost 3 years ago. Wow. So she went to Study Club, and I don't even know how it got that name, but every time there was a question that you had to answer, not really to introduce yourself, because it was the same 25 ladies that came every time, but you, like, my favorite song when my children were little was, and then, I'm because her name is Treva. I'm Treva, and my favorite song when my children were little was this, and it was by so-and-so, and we loved it because blah. So they printed, and it was always 9 months. It always lasted September through May. They printed this little booklet at the beginning of each year, and they had scheduled the program, like I was the program one time, and I talked about, yeah, it math and science, women in math and science, blah blah, right? And I shared just 10 or 12 minutes of being the only female in a classroom of all men and international students, and an international instructor who didn't think women should be in his class in the first place, and just some of my experiences as a math and science person and a female. And they asked me to do that like in June or July, and I did it the following February because they scheduled this whole series. And then, like the opening question that day was such and such. And so it's all printed, well, kind of like you're saying, Vinny, for the ISTE book study, like they've got a schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That was a long story for all of them.
All right. So this is the book schedule I was telling you about.
Oh. I have not seen that book. Who is the author? I can't read that.
Tara Westover.
Okay.
So, and I'm not sure, I haven't gone to the, well, let's go to the website.
Oh, it's a Facebook group.
Do you see that? Are you seeing the Facebook page now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Posting weekly quotes and discussion questions for those of you in the community. So they're not doing an interactive. They're not doing it like we are.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing it more asynchronously, like a Yammer group, that kind of thing.
Like a Google community.
Right.
So. Interesting. Okay.
So I like it in that it's, I like the format, the idea that, they're doing that they have the schedule kind of like what you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I like the personal sharing aspect of it.
I've enjoyed our social, like at the beginning, just it being so casual because, especially with Vinny and I not knowing each other, getting to know each other a little bit more. And then Marie, it's an opportunity for us to kind of catch up a few minutes when we haven't seen each other. So right. I kind of like but I don't mind it being timed where we say, okay, we're just going to, 15
mm-hmm.
minutes social, but I like the relaxed atmosphere we have with it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I think we can have a time schedule like that without it being restrictive, probably.
Yeah.
Correctly.
Well, and I think what it also does is it gives people the opportunity to bring to it what they want to bring to it. If the social time is, if you have time for the social time, because we all have times where it's just like, I just don't have time for this today. Mm-hmm. As much as I'd like to BS, I have a ton of things to do. And
yep.
Is that wall behind you pink, Ginny? That one?
The wall right behind me?
Yeah.
It's like a light pink. It's a beigey pink.
I'm just seeing the color now. Like, wow, that's like pink.
Yeah.
See, mine's a projection. Mine's a virtual wall, but
yeah.
Because actually behind me is just like disaster area. So
yeah.
But yeah, I kind of like the idea that, I have the social today. I want to have the social and, we still have the freedom, but we still know that at such time we're going to have content. We're going to, this is when we're going to get into it. And I think especially as the group gets bigger, if we do expand the group, that I think that becomes important, is the idea that people need to know that mm-hmm. it's not just an opportunity for us to socialize. There has to be a meaningful component to it as well, an instructional aspect.
Yeah.
Right. I actually think, because I've been in not only book studies, but Bible studies, where all we did was everyone share about how their week had gone. And then I've been in Bible studies where we were very intentionally looking at a book in the, and really working through what it was trying to share with us. And people show up for the second one. And though it seems fun to do the first one, you're like, oh yeah, we just need something chill for a few months here and just like really more of a support group. No, people quit coming to that.
Yeah.
So
Bible Anonymous, it's not drawing the people out.
not so much.
All right, so we have some thoughts here. We do want to scale up. So if we're going to scale up, do we want to find some? Well, first of all, we should probably pick a next book.
Yeah, definitely.
Brene Brown.
Yes, we're gonna read a Brene Brown book. Benny, get on.
Dare to Lead.
Spell that name for me.
Brene. It's like Renee, but with a B on the front.
Brene Brown.
Dare to Lead.
Her TED Talk has more than 10 million views.
The Power of Vulnerability.
Yep. But on Netflix, it's called The Call to Courage.
Right.
Okay.
And
All right, but if you guys have read the book, then
No, we
haven't
want
read
to read the book. Well, and actually, she has 5 New York Times bestsellers.
Right. But I want to read Dare to Lead. Let me grab it. I think I know where it is.
Look at her in her new house, how she can put her hands on something that she ordered before she moved. It's not a real thing that's happened when I've moved.
Tough Conversations, Whole Heart. It's a relatively new book, too.
Dare to Lead.
And
That's good to me. I mean, I really also want to read, I want to know what someone who's read both thinks about whether or not we should read Daring Greatly first.
Well, that's what my principal and assistant principal are really into this too, and that's where this one was the one that was given to me because they thought this one was
Okay. Right. I just, I know that she wrote Daring Greatly before she wrote Dare to Lead,
right.
but I didn't necessarily know if it was a prequel.
I don't think it is.
Okay. And since we've seen the Netflix special, we're now qualified to read Dare to Lead, right?
Yes.